This is the McKinsey podcast, where we help you make sense out of our world's toughest business challenges.
Welcome to the show. I'm Lucia Rahili.
And I'm Roberta Fasaro. Hi, everyone. It's Roberta. And today we have a special episode of the McKinsey podcast. McKinsey partner Ferry Friedbank is joining us almost live from Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Mobile World Congress is one of the largest gatherings of mobile technology industry professionals. Ferry, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
What's the mood in Barcelona?
To be honest, it's on one hand very exciting. We've of course got the CEOs of the large telcos, the CEO of the large vendors. We have 100,000 people here at the moment. At the same time, it's one of those years in the middle. We have a lot of talk about AI, but I think it's slowly started to set in with people here that it will take time to build the right data, to build the right structure in an ethical and responsible way. We also see, for example, discussion on network APIs, where we were very excited last year, and a lot of work has happened. The telcos have formed a JV, 12, 13 large telcos formed a JV with one of the vendors to bring them out. But it's all laying the groundwork. So the monetization, really making sure that customers, enterprises feel it, that will take some time. This year is how are we going to deploy that tech and make real value happen? Value for the shareholders, value for the customers, value for the enterprises.
Has Gen AI been the single most talked about topic, or have there been other kind of new and exciting topics to emerge?
Interestingly enough, AI is everywhere, and everybody talks about AI, but subdued. Like, okay, we have agents, we have use cases, POCs, but not scale yet. And people hope that by this year there will be a lot of scale. The other thing which is quite surprising is satellite. So we, of course, at the Mobile World Congress, so typically we talk about satellite. But with the US now having this, what we call direct to satellite, where you can use SMS directly to a satellite and maybe potentially even making phone calls, that is really shaking up the industry because it will require you have less network, you have more coverage at different places. So it will really change the dynamic of the industry.
Does that represent one of the key growth areas, or are there others that are really shaking up the industry?
Well, what was also interesting to see is a big divergence between what I would call the Western telcos and the more emerging market telcos. This year, there's Keynote 1, there was a couple of large Western telcos presenting, which was upbeat around enterprise APIs. But then the next keynotes were emerging market telcos, which are talking about what can we do in fintech? How are we going to help our continent or our countries to deploy AI? So quite different, also very upbeat. It was very, very exciting to see actually how positive and inspired they are.
Last year, we did this same kind of interview. We talked a lot about 5G and Gen AI. Maybe we were excited about the potential there. Is there discussion about how has 5G evolved, for instance?
So there's upgrades still need to happen. But overall, what you see is that the industry is realizing that they need to bond together to make the value and to create the value out of it. This is not individual telcos competing with each other. It's basically the telcos jointly bringing this capability so enterprises can use this, developers can use it. And that's a different muscle this industry needs to flex. They're very used to compete hard, head to head with each other. Now they need to bring a capability to system integrators, developers, to create new magical experiences with it. So that's scary because that's a muscle we haven't flexed a lot of times. But it's also very passionate. You now see indie developers at a meeting with a group of young developers who try to use some of these APIs to use it in gaming, for example, or enterprises that can use it to fight fraud. How do I use the 5G network in optimizing my autonomous truck operations? So it's really from technology promises to really delivering customer value.
One thing that I've been intrigued with, because I've been following the happenings from afar via social media, and I see a lot of innovation with phones themselves, right? So foldable phones, tiny pocket projectors. I'm curious if any of that sort of techie tech has sort of been intriguing to you, and maybe what you've seen on the ground, if anything's been really exciting to you in terms of the actual mobile phone design and where that's going.
So when you look at the form factors, the phones look the same for the last 7 years. And now over the last 12 months, I think you see the form factors of the flip phone happening because of foldable screen. We see a lot of Asian panelists actually showing off their cool phones. But secondly, we also see more and more people starting to use phone technology in glasses. So can we integrate the phone with smart glasses? So there's a lot of new experimentation going. We haven't landed on something specific. The foldable phone is still pretty niche. But it's actually for the first time in 7-8 years that we see people experimenting, and that has to do with Gen AI, because the reality is that once the interface becomes a bit easier, you can talk with the phones understand you a bit better, then that pane of glass you have is not necessarily it. It can be anything. So I think much more innovation now. So it's going to be a very exciting period. A blind person showed me one of those glasses where there's a little camera and he talks with it. And he says, when I go to a supermarket, often people put things back in the wrong place. So now I just pick it up and I ask my glasses, hey, is this the right rise, the 10-minute rise I want? And he says, yes, it is. Or if it's not, he can pick the other. So also for people who are disabled or for people that don't have access to everything, you're maybe not great with language, these new form factors can really open up the technology for you.
What is the most surprising speaker or announcement or experience that you've had at Mobile World Congress this year?
What was most amazing is actually seeing so many other industry joining. So we're actually next to a defense player here, quite close to the McKinsey stand. There's a car company. We even have a telco and now has a AI delivery van for groceries. Given that we're in that phase of monetizing the technology, it's not only about phones anymore. It's about robots. It's about drones. It's about radar. It's a bit like Paris in 1880. It's just you see all the new stuff which will happen in the next 10 years. It's super exciting, actually.
I know you have to get back to the floor. So my final question here is really just about Barcelona itself. You've been there multiple times. What's been different for you this year?
I've been 20 years in Barcelona, and I always pass the Gaudi building by taxi, and it looks beautiful on the outside. I've never been inside, and it's stunning. It has this small, beautiful, round rooms, colorful gardens, rooftops. So anybody who goes to Barcelona, it's a huge queue, but it's worth the effort. It was really, really stunning.
Thanks so much for taking the time out today, and I hope you have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. Really exciting.
Thanks so much for listening to the McKinsey podcast. I'm Lucia Rahili.
And I'm Roberta Fasaro.
Find us on McKinsey.com. We'll have a transcript of this episode up shortly.
And download the McKinsey Insights app, where you can find this podcast and other helpful content updated daily.
If you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to leave a rating and a review.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.